we'll start on this first. Ukraine agrees to a peace deal, only minor details left, right?
This,
and in the morning,
this leak suggests that that's not the case.
Yeah, so this morning, when it first came out, was the news was that Zelensky was going to come to the United States of America or like have a conversation with Donald Trump during Thanksgiving. But it turns out that there was no imminent Trump-Zelensky meeting. Driscoll to meet the Ukrainians and Witkoff to meet Putin. Trump will meet Putin and Zelensky only when the deal is final or in the final stages. And here were the details. Over the past week, my team has made tremendous progress with respect to the end of the war between Russia and Ukraine, a war that would have never started if I were president. Last month, 25,000 soldiers died. The original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the United States, has been fine-tuned with additional input from both sides, and there are only a few remaining points of disagreement. In the hopes of finalizing this peace plan, I have directed my special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to meet with the President Putin in Moscow. And at the same time, Secretary of Army Dan Driscoll will be meeting with the Ukrainians. I will be briefed on all progress made, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter, and let's all hope that peace can be accomplished as soon as possible. It immediately destroyed that previous reporting that speculated that this deal was ready to be finalized. And Bloomberg had the exclusive transcript. Putin advisors discuss plans for dealing with Trump. The call is from October 29th, a phone call between Yuri Yushakov, Vladimir Putin's most senior foreign policy advisor, and Kirill Dmitriev, an economic advisor for the Russian president. The transcript was prepared after Bloomberg reviewed a recording of the call. The original Russian is included below for translation for reference. Ushakov, hello. Wait, why did they put hello? You could say hello. This is a transcript that has been like, I guess they wanted to make it more Russian. Hello.
I'll be.
Suka bliat. Как дела? Как тебя зовут? Hello.
Oh my God.
Yuri Viktorovich.
I'll be, yes, okay. Kirill Alexandrovich. Well, I've sent everything there. We'll talk tomorrow.
Well, great. I flew to Saudi Arabia, but it seems to me it's very important because it's a really good way forward.
Well, we need the maximum, don't you think?
Oh, come on. You don't.
Well, we need the maximum, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I feel bad doing that.
No.
What do you think? Otherwise, what is the point of passing anything on?
Niet, look. I think we'll just make this paper from our position, and I'll informally pass it along, making it clear that it is all informal, and I'll let them do it like their own. But I don't think they'll take exactly our version, but at least it'll be as close to it as possible.
Well, that's exactly the point. They might not take and say that it was agreed with us. That's what I am afraid of.
Niet, suka bliat. I'll say it exactly as you say it, word for word.
They might twist it later, that's all. There is that risk. Well, all right, never mind. We'll see.
Yeah, it seems to me you can talk later with Steve about this paper. We will do everything neatly. Thank you so much, Yuri Viktorovich. Thank you so much. Thank you. Goodbye.
They're so much nicer. They have that's like so nice.
Okay, so this is the big takeaway from this is what?
Well, the idea, I think this is like supposed to be a piece of evidence, but the whole idea is that the Russians like essentially claim, or it's what's being claimed is this. That
Witkoff advised Russia on how to pitch Ukraine plan to Trump.
Tell this or whatever. I'll be honest, I don't know. Like I don't have an immediate opinion on like, oh well, this is overstepping the bounds of diplomacy. Although I imagine Bloomberg wouldn't be packaging it if they didn't think that like this, if they didn't think that the news would like change what's going on.
So one of the judges said, this is why CBS will never win. Yes. CBS.
Oh, so we said the second call because the first call is one with Witkoff on it directly. So we did Boris and Natasha.
Also notable that Bloomberg reviewed a second call involving Putin aide Yushakov. This time, instead speaking to Witkoff, Yushakov talks to Putin advisor Kirill Dmitriev. Interestingly, they are also concerned about the peace plan being viewed as the Russian position.
So this is where it's Witkoff saying directly, "Oh, I like this."
Hold on, I'll open the image in a new tab.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Okay, you can be Steve Witkoff because you're too concerned about doing the voice.
Well, it's, I'm not an ethnic.
All right,
That's all I'll say. Yuri, here's what I would do. My recommendation.
Please.
I would make the call and just reiterate that you congratulate the president on this achievement, that you supported it, that you respect that he is a man of peace, and you're really glad to have seen it happen. So I would say that. I think from that, it's going to be a really good call.
Keep going.
Because let me tell you what I told the president. I told the president that the Russian Federation has always wanted a peace deal. That's my belief. I told the president I believe that. And I believe the issue is that we have two nations that are having a hard time coming to a compromise. And when we do, we're going to have a peace deal. I'm even thinking that maybe we set out like a 20-point peace proposal, just like we did in Gaza. We put a 20-point Trump plan together that was 20 points for peace. And I'm thinking maybe we do the same thing with you. My point is this.
Okay, my friend. I think that very point our leaders could discuss. Hey, Steve, I agree with you that he will congratulate. He will say that Mr. Trump is a real peace man and so. That he will say.
But here's what I think would be amazing.
Okay.
What if, hear me out.
I will discuss that with my boss, and then I come back to you, okay?
Yeah, but because listen to what I'm saying. I want you to say, maybe just to say this to President Putin, because I have the deepest respect for President Putin. Maybe he says to President Trump, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace, and that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to those sorts of things, to explore what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Now,
okay, you're getting progressively more Jewish accented with the Steve Witkoff.
Well, one of these things I'm more comfortable with. Can you guess why?
Okay, keep going.
Now, it's also like, can we make a deal? Now, me to you, I know what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying, instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get to a deal here. And I think, Yuri, the president will give me a lot of space and discretion to get to the deal.
I see.
So if we can create that opportunity after this, I talked to Yuri and we had a conversation. I think that could lead to big stuff.
Okay, that sounds good.
And here's one more thing. Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday.
I know that.
I will go to that meeting because they want me there. But I think if possible, we have the call with your boss before that Friday meeting.
Yeah, before, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, I got your advice. So I discuss that with my boss and then I come back to you, okay?
Okay, Yuri, I'll speak to you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks you.
Bye-bye.
That's good. This stuff that they will transcribe it as like bad English on purpose.
It is like, God.
Thanks you. Yes. But okay. I mean, this makes a lot of sense that Steve Witkoff is doing more work to convince Donald Trump than Steve Witkoff is finding himself doing more work to convince Donald Trump than to convince Vladimir Putin. Well, also partially because this quote unquote peace deal is a gift basket for all of Russia's maximalist demands, really. So it does make sense that he has to basically sell this to Donald Trump more than he has to sell this to Putin.
I mean, I think to me, there's a few interesting questions here. The first of which is that this leaking will be a good test of how much is Witkoff directly doing what Trump wants specifically, or is the fact that this leaks and Trump sees that this is how Witkoff represents Trump in private, will Trump be upset with that? And it's hard for me, I'm not, the fact that it got out, the security piece of it, we'll see that, we'll see how the facts come out on that. But as far as the politics of it and how Trump responds, I guess to me, the immediate question I have is
he might like
Trump,
it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I think.
He likes being a fake dictator.
And also he knows, listen, this guy, what is the most common word in that transcript? If aside from the and you and thank and really and good, the most common word in that transcript has to be deal. And so my suspicion is that this is actually Witkoff doing what Trump wants, and that the intendant and that the person making this leak probably knows that, and that what they're intending just to show, obviously, is to add more credence to the idea that Trump is doing Putin's bidding, or Trump is selling out Ukraine and so forth. And if I'm a Ukrainian reading this, I might come to that conclusion too.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, there is this scary conclusion that I think a lot of the American foreign policy side of things need to come to, which is that like America doesn't have the same motion that it once did. Like the period of like complete dominance from the dissolution of the USSR,
the century of American motion.
Yeah, it's over. Like we are back in multipolarity, and I would say that it's getting to a degree where it's like even worse than when it was, or not worse, but like it's even more evenly matched than it was during the Cold War. Perhaps even more advantageous for China, given its like connection to the rest of the world in terms of like being a manufacturing hub. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but that's my assessment.
Well, I agree with you. The idea that like, because to me, it's always sort of like in this moment, it's like obviously the U.S. has more military capacity than any other country by a long shot to do crazy damage, and we control shipping corridors through our navy. You know, China's navy isn't even like it's expanding and developing at a rate far faster than our own.
And it's like our logistics is the most impressive part of it. Like where our capacity to be everywhere around the world in like 48 hours is probably the most.
And like the dollar is like multipolarity is happening, but like the dollar is still also the world reserve currency.
Yeah,
like it's
China has no seemingly by their own admission has no interest or no ambition, at least for now, to assert any sort of dominance or to tackle the dollar hegemony.
Brendan's here.
Oh, nice. Okay, we got the full stack blowback boys in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on, let me see how the guest shot works. I think the guest shot might be a little bit better. It's a little bit darker, but
cute.
What do you guys? You guys were doing a little Eastern Promises before I got here.
Yeah,
we were doing.
Well, he was like Hasan was really getting when I got to do Borscht Belt, it got easier for me.
Yeah, for me, I wanted to show the audience and those tuning in from home why I'm better than CBS News under the control of Barry Weiss.
I see.
Because Barry Weiss is never going to do accurate renditions of leaked transcript phone calls between Russian officials,
Absolutely.
She might air some sort of, calls between Palestinian resistance fighters that are scripted, written in advance very well.
Hello. I am a Palestinian Islamic Jihad guy. I don't know what
Hello, I'm in Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Yeah, and I love...
They put our base right under the air conditioning.
Yeah. I love shooting rockets directly at my own Gazans.
Yep.
Yeah, no, but now we're back. We were talking about also like how the leak might play, or like why it's there, what it suggests, and how like what Hasan was getting at was that like American power is extremely diminished at this moment. Like we can't throw our weight around like we used to. So part of why Witkoff is like doing, he's having this conversation in this way is not just because like Trump is like, oh, Trump is, like licking Putin's balls or whatever, but it's also just because like, yeah, America's not that clouded. And if we want Russia to do any deal at all, like this is how they move. This is how the White House has to move.
Yeah, it's America's totally chopped. America's totally cooked, and America no longer has the same motion that it did on the global stage. And I think it's a hard thing for people to come to terms with. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I've seen. Like, this isn't even a defense of Donald Trump, but like he doesn't have a lot of options in general, it seems, to enforce his will upon whether he has it or not. He doesn't have a lot of options to get Russia to do certain things. I think there was a point of leverage in the beginning that Biden had that's gone now. And that was directly a consequence of like what the battle lines look like in Ukraine. The Ukrainian military no longer having the manpower to even use the Western gear and equipment that they're shipping over is a point of consideration here. Like the bargain of, does Ukraine basically throw its future generation into the front lines in an effort to ensure a potential victory, but like that's not guaranteed at all. Who knows how well that would work, or are they supposed to come to the table and basically concede to the maximalist demands that Russia is making.
I don't know if did you guys see I think it's former Zelensky speechwriter said, we're never gonna, each successive deal will be worse than this.
Yeah.
Which you could retroactively say meant that every possibility for peace before this that has existed was better than the one that came after. And yeah, probably years ago, this should have been something that was...
and it would also then follow that all of the money that we've spent and all of the aid and all of the political will that we've, worked on whipping up to make sure that we could support Ukraine was for naught, because at the end of spending all of these resources, they have even less than they would have had, I guess, like 2 years ago.
Indeed.
People keep saying like Russia still has higher casualties than Ukraine. Yes, but Russia is also like 3 times the size of you. Russia's a bigger country, and especially the way that they have waged war thus far means that if you're the bigger country, you have more people to throw into the meat grinder. I don't understand how people look at the situation and go, "Well, Russia's losing more people." Okay, but the battle lines have not moved. So it clearly doesn't matter that Russia is losing more people, at least from their perspective, because the battle line, actually, it's not even true to say the battle lines haven't moved. They've only moved further and further into Ukraine.
Yep.
Correct. Well, and also like Russia, there's also a point where all this is irrelevant, because like Russia has by now successfully demonstrated that, yeah, the costs can be high for them. It doesn't, like, they've shown that they're willing to endure that and that they can do it with a far less burden in terms of political capital, at least, than like the Ukraine fight has been in the West, where like, you look at every country in continental Europe, and the Ukraine war has like touched their domestic politics dramatically. I think probably Germany most significantly and most obviously. It's just kind of crazy to look at this and still point to like, well, we did to take the Brzezinski attitude of like, well, we bled the Russians a lot. Like, to what end?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, sure, that's the position of, if you're an American who is invested in the American military industrial complex, then yeah, this is like, who gives a shit how many Ukrainians die, right? Like, that's the Lindsey Graham position. For 5% of our military budget, we've been able to wither away a foreign adversary's troops without a single American active duty service member dying in the process. Like, I'd say that's a good bargain. Those are the words of Lindsey Graham.
Understand, but you're talking about, to be clear, a supplemental bigger than $24 billion for Ukraine, and that's going to pass bigger in 45 days.
Oh, absolutely. You know why? Because we need it. We haven't lost one soldier in the Ukraine. We spent less than 5% of our military budget. 50% of the Russian army has been destroyed by the Ukrainians. They would be at Crimea already if the administration hadn't been so slow in giving weapons.
That is the official position of the American. Like, that's the NatSec position, right? And it's channeled by not only Lindsey Graham, but even the likes of like Elizabeth Warren and even Democrats as well, like supposedly progressive Democratic politicians as well. But ultimately, if you're invested in preserving the nation state of Ukraine, if you're invested in like having Ukraine as a country, as a sovereign nation, at a certain point, there needs to be a cessation of hostilities. So what are you going to do in this day and age, with the set of circumstances that we have? America does not have the capacity, I think, to really punish Russia. And at most, what they could do potentially is try to sever Russia's ties with India, but then India is a bulwark against China. And India actually benefits greatly from being the mediator of like Russian oil and gas into European markets. So they're not going to give up on the leverage position that they have between the United States of America and China. So how much could you force India to basically try and punish Russia, aside from the sanctions that we've already implemented on Russia, which the Russian government has clearly positioned against, knowing full well that this could possibly happen?
You had a little bit more of an ability, like I think of we did a whole season on Afghanistan and the U.S. covert and somewhat overt attempt to sabotage Russia's war, or the Soviet Union's war in Afghanistan. But in, as they say, the more multipolar situation we have now, it's a lot harder to whip people into one overwhelming web of obstacles for a years-long war. And the Soviets also controlled most of Afghanistan. They occupied Afghanistan for the most part, unlike Ukraine, where, I mean, swaths of the country, you're not, it's not Gaza. And so you really, it's quite a piecemeal attempt to do what I think we used to be able to do a lot more easily in the Cold War.
Absolutely. And there's the geopolitics of it, right? Like what Brendan was describing in terms of this newer multipolar environment where, yeah, we can't pressure our allies into doing the things that we used to be able to get our allies to do.
Because there's an alternative out there.
So that absolutely. And, there's also like, even if the alternative isn't there yet, a lot of these countries are not willing to, for example, like foreclose strong relationships with China simply because like the U.S. is trying to bully them into doing it now. I mean, I think Argentina is probably the funniest example of that because we literally bailed out Milei, and then Argentina now they now export all their soybeans to China. And so China buys their soybeans instead of ours because of the trade war. So Argentina is helping out China, and it's like it's like the math of this is not as simple as it was before.
Yeah, but
I also think
Besant's friend has his Argentinian debt secured. Like his big gamble is going to pay off eventually.
Well, they
won't default.
I'm sure. I mean, listen.
At least for the time being.
If there's one thing you can say about the Argentinian economy, it's that it will never again go off a cliff.
Yeah.
The other thing though is that like the geopolitics of it, I totally like that totally registers. The other thing I would add is the technological piece of it, which is that in the days of the Afghanistan war, right, like the Soviet Union had to commit huge numbers of troops. The war incurred its reputation as Soviet Union's Vietnam, not because it's analogous to the Vietnam War as itself, but it's because of the impact it had on veterans and returning people. Like it exacted this incredibly high social cost.
And the idea that it was a quagmire without
the quag precisely. But there is also now, like in the Ukraine and Russia war, I mean, we've seen like drones and all of these other ways of having like war being waged technologically, where you can deal damage to human targets and to human beings and to enemy soldiers as well as civilians. But you also like use way fewer, you can expend fewer resources in doing that. And so the whole like, the drone aspect of this and the other pieces of remote warfare that are now just tolerated it's totally like up to the stakes in terms of blood, and limited our ability to, I think, like it's like winning a war like that is just a lot harder of a task than it was before.
You are incredibly invested in having Ukraine giving up. This war is not decided, and the U.S. have little leverage to force a complete surrender of Ukraine as a sovereign state. Russia has spent its Soviet stocks of armor and artillery, and the destruction of its oil and gas sector is adding to a recessionary yet inflationary economy. If you want a more nuanced view of what is going on, then watch Perun on YouTube. Okay.
I was reading that. That was just, it was funny seeing some of these comments.
I don't understand how much people just like lean into their pre-established positions, no matter how much the evidence on the ground suggests the exact opposite. You can keep saying that, I'm too invested in like Russian resources or something, and I'm like glazing Russia or whatever the you want. But that was unironically what people used to say when I said the initial peace deal that was negotiated early on after the Ukrainian forces were able to deliver a defensive blow to the Russian incursion at the time, when they were like, oh, it's just going to be a 2-week special military operation, and we're able to actually push them back from Kiev, was the highest point of leverage. And at the time, people were saying that I was wrong to say this, that I was actually so invested in, I was a Russian op, I was so invested in Vladimir Putin's success or anything like that. But it was like, it turns out years later, when you look at it in the rearview mirror, it does actually come across like it was a sound analysis back then. But instead of people actually looking at this with a critical lens, they just keep going along. The counteroffensive is going to succeed, and then it doesn't. And all it does is it kills more Ukrainian people, and it leads to Russia basically digging in harder and harder to the positions that they've taken. Neither side is winning the ground war. You can't say that if you look at the battle lines, chatter. Like, that's it. You can't say that neither side is winning the ground war if Russia has militarily occupied a significant percentage of Ukrainian territory. If you were to say Russia will demand more and more territory, I'm with you, right? I understand that. I understand where you're coming from with that. Like, I think it's a reasonable suspicion to have. But ultimately, There is not, bro. It took Russia 2 years to take over 1%. It feels like sports fans.
I mean,
like coping with a team that's losing.
Like, okay, look, like I get it, but like he averaged a triple double. No, I think that
it's Chris Paul cuts away at a 43-point lead with a key 3-pointer, you know?
I think yes, because exactly. It's like, oh, it's stalemated. It's stalemated solidly inside Ukraine.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
And not only that, but the real significant problem here isn't that like Russia has hardened its positions and dug into Ukrainian territory, which is just the truth. But beyond that, there is a problem, significant problem with desertions. There's a significant problem with like re-upping the front lines with manpower. And that is reflected even in the polls inside of Ukraine, where people are basically saying, we don't think there's going to be a reasonable solution to this that is good for Ukrainians in general. But we do want the end to the hostilities. The United States' ambition here is not the emancipatory needs of Ukrainians being advanced, but instead simply to funnel as many of our old refurbished gear, our surplus military equipment to Ukraine at a price point that actually the military industrial complex is totally excited by. That's it. That's the American, America is on the right side of this morally, but for the wrong reasons. Okay, so even if you're on the right side of this issue for the wrong reasons, for the wrong ambitions, you ultimately are going to come up with a deal that is horrible for Ukrainians, which is offering additional Ukrainian territory that Russia hasn't even taken on militarily. Right. And that's where we're at now. I don't think it's an appropriate deal. I don't think it's a just deal at all. I don't think you understand. Not gonna lie, Ukraine since the start has been your weakest topic. I know it is. I'm sorry that I'm not giving you.
You actually get the marks in Ukraine.
Yeah, I know. People always yell at me over this, and then slowly but surely, but quietly, they turn around and go, okay, maybe this was a better time to use maximum leverage. Read Levin Anatol on the actual reality of the Ukraine ceasefire deal absurdly being labeled as capitulation. Note in particular the point about the future limit to Ukraine's standing army. These details don't matter to those opposing. They simply want the war to continue.
You interviewed that guy, right?
Yeah.
Anatol Levin.
He's a blowback guest. I don't remember if we included it, but
he's at Quincy Institute. He's a Quincy Institute guy.
It's a bonus episode.
Season 4 bonus episode.
As much of the Western media has absurdly described this as a capitulation of Russia's maximalist demands, it is necessary to point out the ways in which the plan also represents Russian concessions. These are evident in comparison to Putin's aims when he launched the invasion, but also relative to the Russian demands set out in June 2024, which still officially represent Russia's position. Crucially, the plan secures Russia's formal recognition of Ukraine's right to join the European Union, the key issue behind the Maidan revolt in 2013-2014. If Ukraine and the EU can make this a reality, it would anchor Ukraine in the West far more firmly than a NATO membership alone could. In addition, while Russia has previously demanded that Russian be established as an official second national language in Ukraine, the current plan takes a more limited approach. It stipulates that Ukraine will adopt EU standards on religious tolerance and protection of linguistic minorities, and that both countries will agree to abolish discriminatory measures while guaranteeing the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and educational institutions. This is a very significant concession because my Russian sources told me only last month that given EU's total failure to protect Russian minority rights in the Baltic states, no EU guarantees could be taken seriously. In the plan, Russia also abandons its previous demand that Ukraine cede to the entirety of the Kherson and Zaporizhia provinces and receives only de facto recognition of its control over Crimea and the Donbass. Instead of the immediate suspension of sanctions, Russia receives only the vague promise that sanctions relief will be discussed and agreed upon in phases on a case-by-case basis. The provision for amnesty for both sides has been portrayed as a concession to Russia in order to get cases against Russian leaders at the International Criminal Court dropped. However, Wall Street Journal reports that a senior U.S. official said that Ukraine significantly changed one of the 28 points in the version that appeared online. In an apparent move to expose alleged corruption, the draft had called for an audit of all international aid Ukraine had received. The language was changed to say all parties will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war.
Take that deal. I'll take that deal.
The Ukrainian standing armed forces are to be limited to 600,000 men, but far from being real concessions, this looks like a device to save Putin's face. Ukraine cannot possibly sustain a peacetime standing army of 600,000 men. In any future war, it would call up reserves. Moreover, in the Istanbul talks in March 2022, Ukraine was proposing a limit of 250,000 men. Okay, that I didn't know. That actually is a significantly larger concession on the Russian front, especially considering how much more leverage Ukraine had at that time. but I don't know if that's the correct number or not.
I mean, it's also like it's a burden on Ukraine as well to just take that many people out of the prime working force because to have a larger standing army.
Well, also it seems like they're not actually going to have it. Like,
yeah, like it's
they're
like,
already scooping people up in the streets and throwing them into the back.
That's what I mean. Exactly. Like it's like they've already like poisoned the trust of generations in terms of like that. Like it just seems like it's less of a, like the numbers are big for sure, but
on the Ukrainian side, the biggest and most difficult concession by far is agreeing to withdraw from approximately 14% of the Donbass region that Ukraine still holds. Ukrainians have described this to me as completely impossible and said that it would risk a mutiny against it in the army. This proposal, however, softened by the criterion that while the area would come under Russian administrative control, it would be demilitarized and supervised by neutral peacekeepers. And above all, the Ukrainian military must ask whether it is destined to lose this territory if the war drags on, and whether it is truly worth asking U.S. support and tens of thousands of lives in a futile attempt to risking U.S. support and tens of thousands of lives in a futile attempt to hold it. Other alleged concessions by Ukraine and Europe are not real concessions at all. It has long been obvious that the promise of NATO membership for Ukraine is empty. Yeah, that's not even a concession. That's just
never not happening.
Yeah, people got real mad about that and Crimea, and I was like, those aren't real concessions. Those are literally things that Zelensky was. Even in the Turkey plan peace negotiation, Zelensky had already conceded to that. And he said, oh, we'll have a referendum 15 years in the future. You're doing that because you want to not immediately concede that it's like, bygone territory. But you're doing that because you want to, full well that it's not going to ever, going to be discussed, especially given the battle lines currently, and that you want to deal with it. You want to neutralize that point of contention without having Ukrainians assassinate you, right? That was the reason why he was saying that. So those aren't even necessarily concessions.
And the rest of this
is a concession though. The Donbass region is the most like ridiculous part of it, and on the Ukrainian part, that's the most aggressive concession that you are forcing Ukrainians to hold on to. And then on the other front, I think Russia's initial demand was like full disarmament, which is ridiculous.
No, that's not happening.
And that is a maximalist position that was never going to happen. And it seems like 250,000 standing troops or 600,000 standing military troops is like a concession that the Russians are making as opposed to demanding that they fully disarm. Other alleged concessions by Ukraine and Europe are not real concessions at all. As long been obvious, the promise of NATO membership for Ukraine is empty since all NATO governments have made it clear they will never go to war to defend Ukraine. Something that I've also mentioned over and over again from the start, which is whenever people would come to me and say, Hasan, why won't you listen to the voices being made, the demands being made by Ukraine? I would say, okay, some of those voices understandably are demanding a no-fly zone. Why is that a non-starter for America? They're also demanding that Ukraine be defended by NATO military members. Why is that a non-starter for Western countries? The reason why it's a non-starter is because of nukes. That was always a non-starter. They were making those demands as well. Those were righteous demands. Those are understandable demands. The demand for help from the Western world. And yet, weirdly enough, that was a non-starter for Western nations. They never even entertained it. And the reason why they didn't entertain it is because they did not want to start a potential nuclear holocaust with a nuclear armed nation. Similarly, the bar on NATO troops and hence the European reassurance force in Ukraine is meaningless because most European states have refused to take part in such a force. British officials, the chief advocates of the project, have even admitted that no British ground troops would be sent and that the whole idea depended on a U.S. backstop, which Trump will not provide. This was Keir Starmer, who literally said, yes, we're going to send 20,000 troops, some of our best men, which, no, he wasn't. And then he quietly said, well, only if the United States defends, allows us to do so. And that also was never going to happen. There's also, you have to remember, like, there's political considerations for these countries as well. They already are experiencing an energy crisis in their own countries. They already have like domestic concerns that they have to worry about with like nationalist forces rising within their within the European continent and all of these other European nations. And I think like saying we're going to send troops to Ukraine to defend Ukraine without even American aid or American support is going to be a complete non-starter. There's just no shot unless you want all of these countries to be like run by at least aesthetically pro-Russia fascists, which historically they've been pro-NATO, the fascists in Europe. But It'll be like a Maloney style situation.
Yeah, they'll campaign on.
Yeah, they'll
on,
campaign
on all
they'll
of it.
they'll use a pro-Russia position or no war with Russia as a position to win favor with the public and actually come into positions of power, even if they don't actually end up being pro-Russia when they're in office. Because like obviously for European fascists, especially in the Cold War, NATO was the only game in town that restored their power in all of these countries. It's just too much speculation. Yeah, of course, I'm doing political commentary about what could potentially happen. Of course, I'm speculating. It's analysis. It's you can disagree with it, but you have to tell me why you disagree with it. And so far, all of the disagreements come from people who say, "Oh, you're offering a cold hard analysis that I don't want to hear. I want you to tell me that like Ukraine is actually capable of militarily defending its own borders and even push back the Russian forces. They just need a little bit of time." This analysis is exactly, or this commentary is exactly what the media has been saying over and over again for the past couple of years now, and it has literally failed time and time again. It's basically the same as like the Danish guy that we listened to yesterday who went on Channel 4 and was like, we have to take matters into our own hands. We have to take matters into our, yeah. He literally was like, we have to take matters into our own hands. We have to defend Ukraine with our own militaries. If America's not going to step up, we're going to step up. It's like, yeah, the Rasmussen Global ex-Danish prime minister saying, we really have to separate ourselves from America only on this front, but not on like, tariffs or not on securing better relationships or at least like leveraging the relationship you have with China to secure more favorable deals with America in the way that like BRICS nations are doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's crazy that Europe won't even entertain that. I don't understand how comfortable they are being vassals to Donald Trump.
They're doing, I mean, like Germany is like developing and like rapidly expanding its trade relationship with China. Like it's complicated. Like the European states talk a huge game about freezing out China and all this stuff, but that's not what trade balances reflect. And moreover, I also think that like part of what, at least with this Ukraine stuff, like these leaks, for example, at this point, it probably isn't about actually changing the outcome of what happens so much as it is about exacting like maximal political consequences on, your opponents, like making Witkoff and all these people, like entrenching in people's minds the idea that like, oh, these people with Russia, whatever, like, and also in the case of these European states too, like these people are, aligned with pro-Ukrainian interests and are, or at least like arms companies or whomever, and are not exactly in a position to suddenly like flip the switch in the other direction just because the facts have told them to. Sadly, that's not really how it works.
As far as like Ukraine goes, what I'm trying to explain here is that I don't even think that America has enough political power to force Ukraine, or not force Ukraine necessarily, sorry, to force Russia to concede to whatever the they want Russia to concede to. I don't even know if they want Russia to concede. And if you're talking about like whether or not they're sincere, only time will tell, especially because Russia has shown that they're insincere in their ceasefire demands in the past. The last time that Vladimir Putin was basically dangling a ceasefire deal in front of Donald Trump only to basically turn around, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like if you recall, the last time there was even talks about a ceasefire negotiation, that was simply for Russia to continue advancing its position and then getting Donald Trump to undermine Ukraine on the global stage, and even at different points, get the American forces to retreat, like with their surveillance tech. Like there was a cutoff of like arms trades or arms deals for a brief moment for Ukraine, and that was very clearly Russia maneuvering around Donald Trump's inability to deal with the situation and the confidence that he had in his own, I guess, relationship with Vladimir Putin to undermine the Ukrainian position further.
Well, it's reflective of where obviously the Trump administration is, but therefore where the American state is, that there was this assumption, I think, that a personal relationship, an individual like tete-a-tete, is going to be the difference between war and no war, rather than the, network and like just the tendrils creeping over every single aspect of the global economy, American economy, that are, there are deeper reasons for this kind of thing. And obviously, day one, he did not negotiate an end to the war. We talked about this with the Israel stuff. You do, from this angle, look like the cop from Weapons.
I've said that.
Alden Ehrenreich?
Yeah.
I'll take that. He's a good-looking man.
You look like Frankenstein.
Goff!
So we talked about this when we talked about Israel the past few times, is like, I don't think I agree with people who say it is wholly kayfabe that America and Israel disagree, and that all these trips that diplomats take over there are just for their health. there is a waning of American power. We all know that. And it applies to keeping a rather, let's say, dodgy ally, an ally that spies on you and sabotages you and humiliates you constantly, like Israel, whom you also do share interests with. I'm not denying that. And it applies to the same, not wanting to lose that ally, however they are to you. Mm-hmm. Same deal when it comes to thinking that you can just have a personal rapport with the other president and bring something like the Ukraine war to an end. It's just, it's maybe that even could have been relied upon 15 or 20 years ago with a little bit more institutional chunk to it, but certainly not now.
You can't freelance that. No. I think there's that piece of it. I mean, in general, I think a lot of people talked a huge game about how quickly they thought this would come together. Just if you had, we got the motivated party, is there? Trump wants a deal, Putin wants a deal, it'll just come together. And it's like, there are wars where people are far closer together on the actual terms of it. And, patrons are same as well, et cetera. And like the negotiations, don't work out or take forever. For a whole variety of reasons. I mean, it took years for the Vietnam War to end. And Americans were at the negotiating table for the better part of a decade.
I mean, I remember when libs were saying, "Oh no, the Ukraine war will end because Trump is so tight with Putin." That's what I mean. It's not just the Trump administration. There was a collective idea at this stage of America's, rot, that everyone kind of agreed that it would be hashed out between two. In the libs' mind, two gang leaders, and in the minds of Trump people, between two elder statesmen. And it's just not how things typically work.
And also, there was this whole, I mean, at least to me, one of the things that is unresolved itself is also what this Ukraine is itself. I mean, it's another good point is something that we obviously emphasize in blowback is that so-called vassal states are rarely ever often just totally limp appendages of the countries that fund them. Domestic politics in Ukraine do matter, and the clear ongoing competition for power at this point kind of what it seems like to succeed Zelensky or to end things in a whatever the coalitional rearrangement that has to happen there. It does seem also that's been pretty neglected in our media, at least beyond just the periodic things it turns out this really senior guy.
They do bring that up now. And that to me is a telltale sign that that they are also coming to terms with forcing Ukraine's hand to a deal that will violate whatever Ukrainian sovereignty could have existed. Because you start seeing pre-Russian invasion of Ukraine, there was a ton of articles about how there was corruption in Ukraine. If you recall, there was also coverage on the Azov battalion that even led to legislative action to basically deny weapons transfers to the Azov battalion because they were open neo-Nazi, stuff like that. Whereas obviously in the process of the Russian invasion, all of that went away. And then now you're seeing...
You mean it went away in the coverage?
Yeah, it went away in the coverage, exactly.
Yeah.
But now you're kind of seeing Western outlets, American media still bring back, the corruption charges against Zelensky and in their coverage and stuff. And I think that is a way for the State Department to change their priorities or change their attitude about what to do with Ukraine, and that's the media coverage shifting reflects America's priorities shifting as well.
Yep,
that's what it's to pressure the Ukrainian side to basically play ball with whatever. That's a whole pound, by the way, of chicken breast kebab, like an entire pound.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just glanced at it. Then I could just split.
Do you want just like a regular plate?
Yeah, just
of chicken.
Exactly. Sorry.
Okay. No. Don't apologize. Do you want a whole pound? I can get you the whole pound.
No, I'm good on a whole pound. I'm humiliating myself.
Okay. What do you want?
Now I'm embarrassed. I can't.
What do you want on the side? Choose entree one: rice pilaf, bulgur pilaf, steamed veggies, potato fries, hummus, mutabal. No, I got a pound for myself, but I just wanted to make sure that he knew what he was getting into because he just like added that on.
I just saw chicken, clicked it.
All right, so that's the potential Ukrainian deal at play here.
New Epstein stuff.
And every single time I talk about it, people yell at me and say, "This is my worst point of analysis. I'm weak on this front." And then they never follow up as to why that's the case. Like they will never just be like, "Here's why you're wrong."
It's funny seeing people jump. If I was reading them right, it's funny seeing people jump down the throat if you say, you talk about corruption, you talk about the genuine Nazi problem, as if it's just like
it's Russian propaganda.
As if it's like, okay, well, with Iraq, it was very difficult to avoid people talking about the genuine crimes of the Saddam government and somehow insist that meant you couldn't talk about the, illegality and evil of the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
That somehow when you're not supposed to mention any of that when it comes to, Russia's invasion was not.
I get hit on that front too, though. When I talk about like Venezuela or Maduro, and I say that it's a red line. Any sort of like military incursion in Venezuela, regardless of whether Maduro is unpopular or not, and then people will yell at me and say I'm actually offering legitimate reasons as to why Venezuela must be destroyed by people to the left of me on the anti-imperialist flank.
Right.
But in any case, that's it. That's the peace deal seems not to be as close as previously presented, and that Witkoff is seemingly more invested in trying to
media
get
reporting that Ukraine has apparently accepted
Trump to look good in this process with a position that's like more favorable to Russia, in my opinion. Hi, Dump here. So was a neo-Nazi thing just Russian propaganda? No, of course it wasn't Russian propaganda.
It was reported on plenty before the invasion.
You can also say that like Russia has a neo-Nazi problem in its forces as well, which is also true. There's neo-Nazis on both sides of this conflict.
I don't know if the Russian does have far right idiosyncratic Nazi style guys, but I don't think they're at the quite have made
the
trip to the commanding heights of the government and military the way that has happened over Ukraine, including, by the way, a process that was sped up during this war as well.
Yeah, you could say that like the hyper nationalist like Duginist attitude is it's not like Russia is a socialist country, and they are engaging in irredentist action. So you could literally say that the Duginist mentality is also not dissimilar to like some kind of nationalistic mythos that you see from fascists. But as far as like a straight line to like Nazi collaborators historically, you can draw a direct parallel with like a lot of the self-described fascist forces that have made that obviously had their positions emboldened in the aftermath of the Russian invasion.
Also, it's not just like neo-Nazis like as like this like esoteric segment thing. It's like, I mean, like, Stefan Bandera, national hero, stuff like that. Like, it's not like, again, like I don't think it behooves anybody to get in a debate. It was like, well, there's Nazis on the right, or like Nazis in Russia and Nazis in Ukraine. It's more that like, well, one, which government is funded by my tax dollars?
No.
Yeah.
And also to the idea that like, there is like a particular cultural heritage. I mean, it's not, again, like Russia is historically also Russia is historically also the site of a lot of anti-Semitic violence.
I'm not going to look at the chat anymore.
My disagreement with you on Ukraine is that, in my opinion, you do not consider any of the levers of the pro-Ukraine alliance has to improve their negotiating position. Of course, it will end with concessions and a deal, but you seem to resign yourself to whatever the current deal someone puts out is. I just don't think that even the current deal that we have is going to be implemented. I'm a much more cynical person on this front because I think I see that America does not have any kind of levers to pull any longer, and that we are at the mercy of whatever Russia chooses to do. That's how I see it. I think it's a sober assessment on the things that have happened so far. as far as cutting off oil and gas goes, that's the most consequential one beyond like punishing.
Hey, Europe won a depression.
Beyond punishing Russia, and that is the most effective tool of undermining the Russian economy and crippling the Russian economy. And yet that is a like beyond what we've done so far in terms of like the mother of all sanctions or whatever. There's a reason why they haven't been able to move past that point, because all of the other allies, all the other countries that are that have leveraged positions with Russia and the United States of America, or even with China, are not going to take that on.
I just have to.
India being the main one that I'm talking about, like or Kazakhstan, India, like these are entry points into the Russian economy, and they're benefiting greatly being mediators in this process. We have also not engaged with India. I think you're wrong. If you think that we haven't engaged with India, you're wrong. And as far as not engaging with China, I agree with you. I think that has always been at least my perspective, which is to offer China certain things so that they will come to the negotiating table as a senior partner in this coalition. Maybe you guys will disagree with me on this, even though it's an advantageous position for China to just basically kick back and trade max, as long as you can offer them certain things, like as long as the American government can offer them like sanctions relief or any number of different things that China prioritizes, I think they would be willing to play ball and also force Russia's hand into coming to terms with like a ceasefire negotiation that's more manageable, that they actually will follow through on.
It's unclear. I mean, China, as you say, has been, I think in the very beginning, they issued some kind of vague support for Russia, knowing that there would be backlash against the invasion.
They did like a strategic embrace, like right after the invasion, there was like a big, like it wasn't like it was a way of saying, we're on your side, but we're not like jumping in to support you like in this particular.
But the further it got from that initial starting point, the more they just basically, essentially withdrew any kind of actual possible support for Russia, even though things got worse in certain moments. I mean, we're all yapping here. I just find that the idea, it's like, well, we haven't tried, and then name 3 things we've tried.
Yeah, we have done that.
And then also cutting off oil and gas. It's like cutting off, I mean, like as if that is not, you're talking about this like as you flip a switch and then you throw off, one of the major sources of energy for the world, most notably Europe.
And that was an advantageous position. That was an advantageous position for American gas providers. Like they already...
Yeah, LNG.
They already started supplying LNG from America to the best of their ability. But what you fail to consider is what you are not looking at is the political considerations, both on the European side, but even on the American side as well. Because then you have less power we have no control over the oil and gas giants in our country anyway, but like now they have a new market. It's beneficial for them. It's great for the companies, but it's not necessarily great for the American population. And it's certainly not great for the Europeans that are getting a higher price point, that are not getting the same oil and gas supply. Then you have an inflation. Then you have an inflationary crisis in all these other European countries, and that creates political instability further. So that's it. That's a major issue. That's a major consideration. That's why I'm saying that like this is advantageous for China in many respects, which is why you have to offer them treats. The one thing that hasn't really been tried is trying to bring China to the table to get the senior partner in this coalition to come to terms with like a managed negotiation, a real ceasefire. But ultimately, like I said, this is it doesn't seem to me like you're upset. You're more so upset with like what you are hearing rather than whether or not my analysis here is incorrect. That's it. Yeah, and I don't think that like the equivalence here would be if I was saying that like Hamas has the capacity to militarily defeat Israel and they should keep fighting, And that's never been my position.
The American peace proposal. Let's talk to our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, and our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark, with me in the studio here. So, Alex, to you first of all. So this is, it seems like we've moved forwards, according to American media, but we're not clear whether this is just a slight embellishment on what we knew last night. Tell us where we are with what we know about what Ukraine has agreed to.
Well, it is all fairly unclear. What is clear is that President Zelensky and the Ukrainians are in a difficult position, obviously have been for 11 years since the Russians invaded Crimea and then the full-scale invasion. But this appears to be the answer to what Trump is putting forwards with his initiative. We're hearing I'll just read you these lines. Rustam Umarov, the National Security Advisor.
So Gaza should sign the peace deal that would give Israel control over its land. It's already out of the hands of the Palestinians. That's the point. That's my sober analysis on that, is that like there's not more that the Palestinians can do. Also, as I have repeated over and over again, what will happen in Donbass and in other regions of Ukraine is not dissimilar to what like Hamas is doing as an insurgency against the domineering occupational forces. That's most likely what it's going to look like. Funded, unlike Hamas, funded by Western intelligence as well. So that's most likely what's going to happen, to punish Russia's occupation to the best of their ability and make it as difficult as possible for there to be a permanent occupation of Eastern Ukrainian territory. But that's it. That's very different than state versus state warfare, though.
I don't want to jump down anyone's throat just for making an analogy, because, you know, sometimes they're useful. The idea that this is something you can just one-to-one, as if Ukraine has been occupied by Russia for the past better part of a century, that they have had the keys in terms of, you know, especially with Gaza, in terms of water and food.
No, you don't understand. Palestinians also had nuclear, the Israeli nukes in the same way that Ukraine did. The codes were in the codes were in Tel Aviv, but they had the nuclear stockpile. And
they just, even as you just mentioned, the asymmetrical nature of the warfare. I mean, this is just, you can't just say, oh, so you're saying that in Gaza X, Y, and Z, just like this. It sounds foolish. I'm sorry. It's just, these are not comparable conflicts in most ways that you're trying to put the square peg in the round hole. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Come up with something else.
Just as like our allegiance is entirely on the opposing side here. It's like if America was like funding the Russian incursion into Ukraine as it's funding the Israeli genocide of Palestinians after 80 years of apartheid and occupation.
Occupied by Russia for the better part of a century.
I know. When I heard
you lost me. I'm out.
when I heard you say that, I was like, somebody is going to reply.
Yeah.
I hate that, but people get so mad at that. They make it seem like that is the case. Like it's.
Well, you know, they can.
Whatever. I'm out. It's fine. There's a planetary difference between us.
Yeah.
I can't get into it. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. It's the same Shutter who's critiquing you. I know. You're right. Yes, it's the same.
Free tip, critique, not a verb.
Yeah.
A US official say that there is now an understanding on a proposal that has been reached, but details still need to be worked out.
Sometimes when I do engage in this discourse, though, I'm like, maybe America should actually militarily engage so we can just die in a nuclear holocaust. Like I think I'd rather die in the nuclear winter with the final "I told you so" as like the nuclear sponge, the 5 states in the United States of America are eating the first barrage of missiles. And I'm just sitting here going, hey guys, what happened? I can't believe the thing that I said was going to happen is happening right now. Well, anyway, signing off because I can see the mushroom cloud from outside of my window. Well, but at least I don't have to deal with you dipshits anymore. So it, you know? You would be streaming? Oh, 100% I'd be streaming.
Do you have a plan? You know, like CNN, like Ted Turner made them.
Oh, yeah.
Which is beautifully parodied in Gremlins 2. CNN, on Ted Turner's instruction, had a tape they were going to play if the missiles were in the air. And it was like a military band playing, you know, some old standard.
Yeah, my thing is I'm just going to offer analysis till the very last moment.
Oh, that's...
No. You'll finally play video games on stream.
Yeah, no, you should play. You should jump on. Helldivers.
Like, hey guys, there's like a million people tuning in to watch the very last moments, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Today, actually, I'm gonna finally play a video game.
We're doing Final Fantasy 14 for 72 hours straight.
Yeah, IRL Mushroom Cloud stream. Let's go. Yeah, Fallout Ghoul Arc after. Yeah. The stream picking up Will and Caroline from the fires was diabolical levels of content brain. I did do that during the wildfires.
That's pretty good content. I mean, but that like.
What do you mean? You evacuated people?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I mean,
like a Resident Evil or something.
Yeah.
That would be pretty funny live streaming, like, you know, like a zombie or vampire apocalypse or whatever.
I think someone made a movie about that.
It has to by now.
No, there was George Romero. Unfortunately, one of his last movies was called it wasn't Stream of the Dead, but it could have been. And it was just like found footage of people being like, we're streaming to the viral, network. And it was just another zombie movie.
Yeah.
How Russians are exploiting American naivete is the other side of this equation, which is like what they've done so far. They keep coming to the table to be like, oh yeah, we want a ceasefire, only to not do the ceasefire at all, to be like, oh, it's just not right now, not the right time for us, Yeah. Sorry. And that is the very real consequence of this potentially, but we'll see where it goes.
Oh, yeah, scroll up. This person's posted this a few times.
Because they will just freak out and nuke everyone if that ever happens. In such a world, when will Russia ever feasibly stop its territorial expansion?
Yeah.
I mean, the same argument is made against America as well. And that's just the name of the game for a nuclear world, unfortunately. That's why all of the post-World War II battles have been proxy battles between nuclear armed states, one with direct intervention and the other one with like direct like logistical intervention.
They're not even in Kyiv. They're not even in Kyiv. And they originally, by the way, could have tried to occupy Kyiv, and they chose not to. What is this like map? I'm picturing like one of those things in the Cold War where like the map bleeds red. The whole globe is enveloped by this by the hammer and sickle. It's just a never-ending territorial expansion. You got to get a grip here.
I mean, it's just not. It's.
I mean, I don't. You can also. You can also say that, like, do they even have the capacity to permanently, fully occupy the entirety of Ukraine?
Probably not.
No,
yeah, it's too vast. It's too large. And in the words of Trump, it's too flat. When a bullet is fired on Ukrainian land, all it does is hit a body and nothing else.
Someone's giving me shit. Chose not to. Yeah, they opted not to try that. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, just get
It's too flat. Ukraine is too flat.
Get a little real about this stuff.
Yeah,
you're talking about it like it's sports.
So much. I will say so much so that it actually got the previous position of like handshake neutrality between Sweden and Finland to change, because they realized that like Russia is not as big as a threat, in my opinion, because not only did they entertain how Russia is engaging in like incursion beyond what they previously thought was not going to happen, but they also showed that they were not capable of also taking over the entirety of Ukraine, and therefore it gave more confidence to the the Finlandization of NATO understanders and appreciators.
This is my last comment. Is this idea that they drove all the way up to choose not to occupy Ukraine. I don't know if you guys are history buffs, but you can actually try to occupy the entire country, or certainly the capital. We did that in Iraq, Afghanistan, a couple other places, and then it cannot go well. So you can try to assess whether or not that would be possible but stupid, and then decide whether or not to go all in. And they chose not to do that.
The NATOization of Finland.
Anyway.
Sorry.